If you were a kid in the 80s, cartoons weren't just shows. They were a full-blown adrenaline rush. Before school, after school, Saturday mornings, random syndication blocks, you name it, we were glued to the screen. Previously, we uncovered 10 forgotten 80s cartoons that only true Gen Xers still remember, so if you missed that one, the link's in the description, and now we're back because we barely scratched the surface. Today, we're diving into 10 more forgotten animated gems that took over our living room. Stick around till the end, because one of these cartoons helped kickstart Disney's TV empire, and another still has unfinished business. Number 10, the Snorks, NBC and syndication.
8, 9, that's 10. There, and remember, I want it big.
First up, we have the Snorks, basically the Smurfs-of-the-sea. If the Smurfs had better technology and snorkels growing out of their heads. Freddie Monnickendam, the guy who helped bring the Smurfs to TV, had a nasty legal breakup with the Smurfs creator, Peyo. So, naturally, he went and made his own tiny creature cartoon, but underwater. Talk about taking the phrase "when one door closes, flood the basement and start over" literally. Here's the kicker. These little underwater critters started life as robotic characters called Diskies before evolving into sea creatures. Pretty much pure 80s cartoon logic at its finest. The show packed serious voice talent. Frank Welker, one of the biggest voice actors in history, think Scooby-Doo and Megatron, gave voice to Aki, the show's pet octopus, and a young Nancy Cartwright voiced Daphne Gilliffin years before she'd become Bart Simpson, which explains why every time Bart says, "Don't have a cow, man,"
Don't have a cow, Dad.
part of you hears, "Come along with the Snorks." The Snorks premiered on September 15, 1984, and after 2 seasons on NBC, got demoted to syndication as part of the fantastic world of Hanna-Barbera, where cartoons went when networks didn't love them anymore, but toy companies still needed to sell plastic. The Snorks actually ran for 4 seasons until March 15, 1989, but they never quite captured the Smurfs' magic, or their toy sales. Let's be honest. When your villain is named Junior Wetworth, you're not exactly striking fear into the hearts of children. Still, if you suddenly find yourself humming along "Come Along with the Snorks" at 3 a.m., now you know why and who to blame. Too much? Alright, moving right along. Number 9, the Wuzzles, CBS.
Welcome to the land of Wuz, where nobody is like anybody you've seen before.
Now, if you thought the Snorks were weird, hold on to your mullet. The Wuzzles was Disney's early TV experiment, pastel-colored creatures that were half one animal and half another. Premiering September 14, 1985 on CBS, the show only lasted until December 7th that same year. 13 episodes and poof, gone faster than your dad's paycheck at Radio Shack. These bizarre hybrid critters all lived on the Isle of Wuz, where everything was mixed, from appleberries to castle scrapers. Even the villains were mashups. The main bad guy, Crocosaurus, was half crocodile, half dinosaur, because apparently being just one terrifying reptile wasn't evil enough for Disney. Sadly, tragedy struck almost immediately. Bill Scott, the voice of Moosel and the legendary Bullwinkle, died during the show's run. Rumor has it Disney backed off promoting the Wuzzles after that, focusing instead on their other breakout hit, the Gummy Bears, which premiered the exact same day but on NBC. Talk about a sibling rivalry. A fun fact though, Henry Gibson, who voiced Ella Roo, the elephant kangaroo with a memory problem, was already a household name from Rowan and Martin's Laugh In. And Joanne Worley, the voice of Hoppopotamus, brought her over-the-top personality from the same show. Basically, Disney rated 60s comedy shows for voice talent. The Wuzzles only lasted 13 episodes, but their toys still haunt vintage collectors' dreams and occasionally pop up in other Disney shows, including a bizarre cameo in a 2020's DuckTales episode. Not bad for creatures with a split personality. Number 8, Alf, the animated series. And number 7, Heathcliff and the Catillac Cats, syndication.
Heathcliff, no one should terrify their neighborhood.
Before Garfield became the king of lazy orange cats, there was Heathcliff, the original alleyway tough guy with a heart of gold. Debuting in syndication on September 3, 1984, and wrapping up a year later on September 30, 1985, this DIC-produced series marked Heathcliff's second TV incarnation after a forgettable Ruby Spears version from 1980. The show followed a brilliant formula. Split each episode between Heathcliff's neighborhood antics and the adventures of the Catillac Cats, a junkyard gang with surprisingly slick rides. And yes, Cadillac is exactly the kind of pun that kept 80s cartoon writers employed. Here's a fun fact for you. Heathcliff was voiced by Mel Blanc, the legendary voice behind Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and countless others. It was one of Blanc's last big TV roles before he passed away in 1989. When asked why the show ended, voice actress Donna Christie revealed it was largely due to Blanc's failing health. Turns out even the man of 1,000 voices couldn't keep going forever. The show went global, airing in the UK as Heathcliff Cats & Co. and in France, and pardon my butchering of this, as Les Entrechats. Apparently sassy orange cats transcend language barriers. Heathcliff even scored a movie in 1986, Heathcliff the Movie, but it was basically just 7 episodes stitched together faster than a last-minute science fair project, and we loved it anyway. Still, if you remember Riff Raff cruising around a cobbled-together convertible, or Heathcliff terrorizing the neighborhood fishmonger, congratulations. You had excellent weekday afternoon taste. Alright, now I have a quick question for you. If you could live inside of one of these cartoon worlds, which would you pick? Drop your answer in the comment section below. Number 6, Centurions, syndication.
It's time we had a little help from our friends. Calling Skyvault. Crystal, priority alert.
When just being human wasn't extreme enough for the 80s, we got the Centurions, heroes who could snap weapons onto their exoframes like human Swiss Army knives. Airing in first-run syndication from April 7th to December 12th, 1986, Centurions was another mini-series that did well enough to become a series success story. The show began as a 5-part mini-series before expanding to a full 65-episode run all in the same year. Talk about your rushed production schedules. The premise was peak 80s. Jake Rockwell, Ace McCloud, and Max Ray, all 80s names by the way, battled the evil cyborg Dr. Terror with the power of Power Extreme, a phrase that was legally required to be shouted at maximum volume. Each hero had specialized weapon systems beamed down from a space station called Skyvault. Land operations, sea operations, air ops, they had all the operations covered. Doug Wildley, who helped create Johnny Quest, co-created Centurions, trying to fuse gritty realism with sci-fi fantasy. The series also boasted designs from comic legends Jack Kirby and Jill Kane, which explains why everything looked like it belonged in a cosmic Marvel comic. For voice talent, the show packed in Michael Bell, who played Jake and also Duke in G.I. Joe, Neil Ross, who was Ace and also Shipwreck in G.I. Joe, and Pat Fraley, who voiced Max Ray and would later play Krang in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Apparently, if you weren't in G.I. Joe, you weren't getting hired for 80s cartoons. Sadly, while the toys were rad, they didn't sell well enough for a second wave, probably because losing tiny snap-on parts was basically a rite of passage. Kids would excitedly open their new Centurion, play with it for 15 minutes, and then spend the next 3 years finding weapons in the couch cushions. To this day, men in their 40s still occasionally shout "Power Extreme" in empty elevators, hoping someone will get the reference. Number 5, Pole Position, CBS.
Rev up for excitement with the Pole Position team. Today's adventure, the Cove.
Imagine being a stunt-driving teenager fighting cybercrime with a talking sports car and somehow still having to do your homework. While airing on ABC from September 15th to December 8th, 1984, Pole Position was loosely based on the arcade game, and when we say loosely, we mean barely related at all. The show borrowed the name to capitalize on the game's popularity, but that's where the similarities ended, unless you count one car being red and the other blue, just like in the arcade games. The real heart of the show was the Darrett siblings, Tess and Dan, and their preteen sister Daisy, who all became orphans after their stunt driver parents died in an accident. Because nothing says appropriate guardian like the wheelchair-using Uncle Zach, who immediately put the kids to work as government agents driving superpowered AI cars. Their vehicles, Wheels and Rhodey, weren't just cool rides. They were sentient computers with personalities who talked through dashboard screens, and get this, Wheels was voiced by Melvin Franklin from The Temptations, bringing smooth bass vocals to a talking Mustang. Can you imagine Wheels breaking out in My Girl mid-episode? I mean, it was the 80s, so it probably would have happened if the show ran one more season. Anyway, only 13 episodes were made, mostly because CBS bet big on video game cartoons and lost badly after Pac-Man fizzled. It was part of that weird mid-80s period when TV executives thought kids like video games, so they'll watch anything with a video game name, completely missing that most games had no plot whatsoever. Pole Position might not have lasted, but its theme song still makes you want to peel out of a driveway somewhere. If nothing else, it taught kids everywhere that the fastest way to get a cool car with rockets wasn't saving your allowance, it was becoming a government-sponsored orphan. Ah, the 80s. Number 4. M.A.S.K, the Mobile Armored Strike Command. Syndication. In a world where everything had to transform into something cooler, M.A.S.K was born! Airing in syndication from September 30th, 1985 to November 26, 1986, M.A.S.K, which stood for Mobile Armored Strike Command because nothing says covert organization like spelling command with a K, pit Matt Tracker and his team against the evil forces of Venom, the vicious evil network of mayhem. The show brilliantly combined two 80s toy trends, transforming vehicles and action figures with special powers. Matt Tracker and his squad fought Miles Mayhem's evil organization using vehicles that could switch into attack modes and, of course, wore special masks that gave them superpowers. Thunderhawk wasn't just a Camaro, it was a Camaro that turned into a jet, and Rhino wasn't just a semi-truck, it was a semi-truck that became a mobile assault base. Because in the 80s, if your toy didn't transform into at least two different things, it wasn't trying hard enough. The first season was pure action gold, with 65 episodes of vehicle transforming, M.A.S.K-powered mayhem. But then the second season shifted weirdly into a racing theme, and only lasted 10 episodes, confusing fans and tanking ratings. It's like they took G.I. Joe and suddenly made it about NASCAR, with occasional shooting. Doug Stone, who voiced Matt Tracker, would later become famous in anime dubs like Robotech and Akira. Meanwhile, most kids had no idea the show was animated in Japan by the same studios that worked on some of their other favorite cartoons. Now, there's been talk for years about a live-action M.A.S.K movie connected to G.I. Joe, but until then, Thunderhawk remains the coolest Camaro with wings that never was. Though, if we're being honest, if you own the toys, those tiny masks got lost faster than socks in a dryer. Number 3. The Bionic Six. Syndication. Before The Incredibles made superpowered families cool, there was the Bionic Six. Premiering in syndication on April 19, 1987 and wrapping up on November 12th of that same year, this show followed Jack and Helen Bennett and their 4 children, all enhanced with bionic powers after a freak avalanche exposed them to mysterious radiation in the Himalayas. The show proudly embraced comic book tradition. After all, if radiation could create the Fantastic Four and the Hulk, why not the Bionic Six? The show was a fascinating US-Japan collaboration animated by TMS Entertainment, the same legendary Japanese studio behind classics like Akira and parts of Batman the Animated Series. If you ever wondered why this Saturday morning show had unusually fluid animation and dynamic action scenes, well, now you know. Each family member got their own superpower specialty. Dad Jack, Bionic 1, had supervision. Mom Helen, Mother 1, had ESP. Son Eric, Sport 1, had electromagnetic powers. Daughter Megan, Rock 1, had sonic powers. Adopted son JD, or IQ, had superintelligence. And foster son Bungie, Karate 1, had enhanced martial arts skills, because nothing says subtle superhero name like adding 1 to everything. The voice cast was stacked with talent. Neil Ross voiced the robotic gorilla Fluffy, who had a bizarre appetite for eating aluminum cans and anything else metallic he could find. Brian Tochi played Karate 1, and John Stevenson voiced Bionic 1. If those names sound familiar, it's because they voiced half the cartoons in the 1980s. High production costs and mediocre toy sales doomed Bionic 6 after just one season of 65 episodes. The action figures were actually pretty cool, made both of plastic and die-cast metal with transparent limbs, but apparently kids in 1987 wanted their toys to either transform or have ninja weapons. Still, if you remember fighting over who got to be Sport 1 or Rock 1 on the playground, you know it deserved better. And if you're wondering about that 1 suffix, IQ was the only team member without it, probably because IQ1 sounds like someone failing an intelligence test. Although I think they missed an opportunity to call him Smart 1. Number 2, Wildfire, CBS.
Once upon a dream, I think I lived inside a fairy tale where
Just when you thought talking animal cartoons couldn't get weirder, Hanna-Barbera said hold my interdimensional portal and gave us Wildfire. Galloping onto CBS from September 13th to December 13th, 1986, this show followed Sarah, a 13-year-old Montana farm girl who discovers she's actually a princess from the magical realm of Darshan. Because in the 80s, every girl needed to find out she was secretly royalty from another dimension. The premise was pure fantasy madness. Baby Princess Sarah gets rescued from her evil aunt, Lady Diabolin, by a talking horse named Wildfire, who brings her to Montana, where she's taken in by a farmer named John. 13 years later, Wildfire starts summoning Sarah through her magic amulet to battle evil and reclaim her throne. Oh, and in a twist that would make Luke Skywalker need extra therapy, John turns out to be Sarah's biological father, Prince Kavan, with his memories conveniently erased to protect him. In an unexpected casting choice, Mr. Double Secret Probation himself, John Vernon, voiced the heroic talking horse Wildfire, proving that the man who terrorized Animal House could also play a magical pony. Jessica Walter, decades before verbally eviscerating her family in Arrested Development, ate in the animated scenery as the villainous Lady Diabolin. Lady Diabolin commanded an army of goons, former guards who gained monstrous appearances after releasing the evil specters. One goon was voiced by Billy Barty, the legendary little person actor who apparently had a contractual obligation to appear in every fantasy project of the decade. Despite its star-studded voice cast, Wildfire only lasted 13 episodes. The Los Angeles Times brutally noted that the artists don't understand how a horse moves, which is kind of a problem when your main character is, a horse. Still, for one magical season, Wildfire let kids everywhere dream that their pet might secretly be a magical being waiting to reveal their royal heritage before disappointing them with the harsh reality that Whiskers was just an ordinary cat who couldn't even talk, let alone transport them across dimensions. Number 1, Dungeons & Dragons, CBS.
Hey, look! A Dungeons and Dragons ride!
At number 1, it's Dungeons & Dragons, a cartoon that hit different and left us hanging harder than any Saturday morning show ever dared. Premiering on CBS on September 17, 1983 and running until December 7, 1985, this show answered the burning question. What if 6 teenagers with questionable theme park judgment got sucked into their dungeon master's basement campaign? The premise was peak 80s fantasy. 6 kids take a dark ride roller coaster and, surprise, end up in a realm where a bald little man in a red robe gives them magical weapons and vague directions. Because nothing says responsible adult like giving children weapons and telling them to go fight evil. Each kid got their own D&D class and magical item. Hank the Ranger shot energy arrows that could do literally anything the plot required. Eric the Cavalier had a magic shield and complained about everything, honestly the most realistic teenager in animation history. Diana the Acrobat had a magic stick, Presto the Magician had a hat that never worked right, Sheila the Thief could turn invisible, and her baby brother Bobby the Barbarian had a club that caused earthquakes. Add in Uni, the bleeding baby unicorn sidekick who contributed absolutely nothing useful, and you've got yourself a party. Every week, the enigmatic dungeon master would show up, drop some cryptic fortune cookie wisdom, then disappear, leaving the kids to battle Venger, a one-horned villain who looked like Maleficent's angrier cousin. And whenever Venger got too cocky, Tiamat, the 5-headed dragon, would show up to keep things interesting. The fluid animation and dark themes made it stand out from the usual Saturday morning sugar rush, making it a stark contrast to the body horror transformation of Turbo Teen from our previous countdown. The show was so controversial that parent groups freaked out, claiming it promoted witchcraft and violence. CBS executives clutched their pearls despite solid ratings and eventually pulled the plug before the story could wrap up. The planned finale, where we'd learn Venger was actually Dungeon Master's corrupted son, was never produced, leaving an entire generation wondering if those poor kids ever made it home. Meanwhile, the actual Dungeons & Dragons game kept evolving from satanic panic target to mainstream entertainment juggernaut, while these 6 cartoon kids remain forever trapped in animation limbo, possibly the cruelest cliffhanger in Saturday morning history. And there you have it, 10 more forgotten treasures from the neon-soaked glory days, otherwise known as 80s cartoons. Which cartoon unlocked a lost memory for you? Tell us about it down below, and if you missed our first countdown, be sure to check it out. Turbo Teen's body horror transformation alone is worth the price of admission. Don't leave us stuck in animation limbo, smash that like button, and join the Remember When crew.